Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you all here this evening. It's a pleasure to see so many familiar faces back on campus, and to those of you who I haven't met, we really do warmly welcome you into our community. My name is Lucia. It's my privilege to be the head of Year 7. In the head of year role, we accompany students and parents on their school journey and assist navigating the challenges and triumphs encountered along the way, ensuring each student is supported so that they can unlock their full potential. To see students return this past week and a half has truly been a joy. It's what we live for as teachers. To not be limited by lockdowns or an inability to meet as a cohort, for our Year 7 students to be guided by the Year 12s through those Hayington gates for the very first time, to watch students find new connections through camp whilst battling the adversity of the stand-up paddleboard. Shout out to Miss Bassford over there, we were the first to fall in on camp. And to see the pride in our newest students remembering where F212 is. They're very excited that they could navigate their way there this afternoon. But for our Year 8s, it was terrific to watch them find their new locker, run back to their old Year 7 locker, then tell the Year 7 student that they had inherited their old locker, accompanied by the positives of its location and tips in navigating the quirks of the hinges on the locker. Just today, they were reminiscing about their 80s disco on their own camp, and they were desperate to see the photos. What a pleasure it has been to watch them realise they are no longer the youngest, to see them help students find classrooms and feel welcome, to realise they really are leaders. They have grown up so much since their own first day. There is such an air of possibility and readiness around the clock tower and the courtyard. There are areas of the school. And though the calendar is jam-packed, it is clear that there is an exciting year ahead for our Year 7 and 8 students. It is also my pleasure this evening to introduce you to Miss Alison Cassidy, Head of Year 8 for Term 1, whilst Miss Sky Stansfield is on maternity leave. I know many of you have already spoken to Alison, but you can now put a face to the name. She's come to the role not only with some incredible artistic skills as a visual communications teacher, her office leaves mine for dead, but also she has a wealth of knowledge in the pastoral sphere, having undertaken a variety of wellbeing roles in her previous school. Your child's school journey, though, reaches far beyond the four walls of a classroom. We hope to nurture and educate the whole person, not just beyond the four walls of that classroom, but also well beyond the Hayington gates. And this is reflected in the program for this evening. You will soon hear from our principal, Mrs. Michelle Carroll, regarding the Towards 2025 strategy. St Catherine's prides itself on its excellence in teaching and learning. And you'll hear from our Head of English, Miss Marianne Karadiotis, as she will share with you some insights into the Teaching for Thinking project undertaken by the school and the implications that this is having on thinking and learning in the classroom. Student voice and agency are integral in education, and as such, the final presentation is from a member of our student executive, Arabella Lewin. At the conclusion of the presentation, parents, guardians and staff are warmly invited to the welcome drinks by the fountain hosted by the PFA. We acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional custodians on the land on which we meet today. We pay our respects to the Wurundjeri elders, past, present and emerging, and extend this respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait people from other communities who are here today. I will now hand over to our principal, Mrs. Michelle Carroll.
Thanks, Liv, and hello to everyone here this evening. For those of you that were standing at the bus after the Year 7 camps girls arrived home, you'll appreciate that Liv's had a pretty busy week and then she's again here tonight. So thanks, Liv, and we hope you have a really relaxing weekend. But it's one of those things tonight. Normally we would have Year 7 to 12 parents in here together, but we have separated. Our Year 9s are in the junior school auditorium and our Year 10 to 12 parents are at 7 o'clock, just to sort of reduce the number of people in the room. But we are also, we're not live streaming, but we are recording this evening's presentation. So if there's something that you hear that you'd like to sort of hear again, it will be linked in the lower section of my section of the Blue Ribbon tomorrow afternoon. the marketing team get it cut and in time, but I'm sure that'll be their goal. We were really pleased amidst the chaos of COVID last year to still work through and release our Towards 2025 strategic plan. And this is the work of our school council, who are meeting this weekend. They have a strategy weekend every year. And really it's sort of 2 years of work. And we've really pretty much started this and started our intentions around this strategic plan last year. The top 3 intents are really quite student focused, certainly academic achievement being our core business, well-being, and a real sentiment towards developing leaders in the young women that we have with us, and certainly their co-curricular opportunities. And our Year 7 parents may be a little unknown in this space, but you will soon find your daughter at school very early and often very late, and sometimes those conversations about how you can streamline that are certainly needed. The lower 3 intents are really around our staff and the professional learning programs that we have for St Catherine's teachers, our community, and of course our wholehearted commitment this year is to welcome parents back on campus starting tonight. And Kevin De Souza, who's our new PFA president, will be welcoming people at the drinks. And then also how we equip our future. So what do we do with our school campus? And the Black Box Theatre, which you're welcome to pop your head in, have a look through the glass, is almost ready for completion. So sort of lots of things on the agenda. The top 3 are really about students. And I think when I think about the academic achievement, we started a journey 3 years ago to create every classroom at St Catherine's to be a thinking classroom. And so we are hoping our graduate of 2025 and our graduate of last year and our graduate of 2022, masters independent learning and is able to draw on a comprehensive toolkit of thinking skills. And tonight we're going to, I've asked Mary Ann, our head of English, to sort of share with you what does that actually mean for my daughter in the classroom, and you'll be certainly pleasantly surprised. And of course, we want our graduate of 2025 to be inclusive, and we want her to be able to work in a team environment. But we also want her to embrace community service and to really understand the privilege of a St Catherine's education, and to sort of, boldly follow some passions. And you sort of will learn to understand that as your daughter comes home and says, I'm about to try this, and sort of really experience what it's like through those co-curricular and certainly those camp and global experiences there. The Year 8s this year will look forward to their Central Australia trip. That's in May in term 2. That's the girls from last year, and it's they really love that experience, and certainly the Year 7s can look forward to that. This was really great bragging rights for a principal, I can tell you now, to be the top girls' school in Victoria. We were so thrilled with the results, and it didn't just happen. It really was a journey that we started 3 years ago with some really determined changes to our elective programs, to embrace our thinking strategy, and to really sort of work with our staff to change up what we were doing in the classroom. Certainly, we were delighted to have that median study score of 37, and if you're not familiar with the VCE, you certainly will become that, and a median ATAR of 92. So anything above 90 is the top 10% in the state. So certainly we're really excited about that. And I think the other figure that I was really pleased with is that, we had, 83% of the cohort above an ATAR of 80, and ATARs where you can really start accessing those tertiary options, and that's the top 20% of the state. So just stellar results from full range of students and that little middle band of girls that were able to really lift up into some great results. As I said, that just didn't happen in 1 year. It's really been probably a 3-year journey for our teaching staff and our heads of faculty. And Rob Marshall, one of our deputy principals, who loves data, from my point of view, you always need someone to love data. And he created, I think it's about a 40-page report on the VCE results last year, just really distilling what happened and where and that sort of thing. And together with our Director of Teaching and Learning and our heads of faculty, we really sort of unpacked what, how did this occur, and what are we sort of, needing to repeat year on year. And certainly our teacher mastery. So we've got outstanding ICT skills, even more outstanding than where we were 2 years ago pre-COVID. We've had really innovative curriculum design, particularly during COVID and lockdown, and sort of really mastered the art of learning online last year. We have a lot of pedagogical expertise, and that really means what's happening in the classroom. What does classroom practice look like? Our lessons start with very clear learning intentions. By the end of today's lessons, girls, you need to know this, this, and this. So, what am I here learning today? Certainly last year with our VCE students, some really explicit teaching of exam technique and really understanding what's required in a VCE exam and ensuring readiness of that as well. We were really pleased with sort of the trusting relationship we had with our VCE students last year, and a learning culture where trust really underpins what happens between students, teachers and parents. And our heads of year were continually on the phone to parents right through lockdown last year, and we were able to, place a safety net under girls the whole time, whether they were at home or whether they were at school. And I guess that really is a bit of a small school advantage. The thinking classroom, which you'll hear a little bit more from Marianne, and really that's an intersection of the content knowledge that you need and what you do with that, what you do with knowledge. It's not just about rote learning, and the feedback they are given about their thinking. And you'll be amazed to hear what your daughter will do in English this year. A really high level of student care, and just hearing from Liv and Alison and who you know of Sky, they just know your daughters and they know them well. And I think even though we felt Year 7 camp was a bit of a baptism of fire in the week 2, Liv now knows every Year 7 and can sort of say, oh, she did really well and I love seeing her on this and she stood up on the surfboard. There's a sense of knowing girls and knowing them well, and a great port of contact as well. And I think the other success point for us last year was we did every lesson every day. And even though it was a fine balance between on-screen and off-screen work, we were not taking days off between, being online and coming back to school, or from school going back onto online. We just kept ticking along in a routine. A number of other schools said, oh no, we'll take a day here. Now that would have occurred 8 times last year. So we had 8 additional days of teaching. And we really balanced the lessons where in the senior school it was a 70-minute lesson. Teachers touched base for 20 minutes, gave 30 minutes of work touch base again for 20 minutes. So continual contact with teachers. A number of schools said, here's the worksheet, see you in 2 days, kept teaching and kept that routine. So that's our success story last year. And I think it's really important that whilst we're really excited about our results, we actually know what we did. And we're really happy to articulate that as well. Of course, what's not lost on me is the value of the teaching staff last year, and it was great to see them arrive so refreshed last year, because it was tiring and it was hard work, and they did work incredibly hard to get those girls through that VCE course. And we have an amazing teaching staff, and they really like to work in partnership with parents. So if you have a concern, please reach out. We are great troubleshooters, problem solvers, and together and collectively we've got years and years of experience of working with teenage girls. I love this photo. The Barbaric parents here tonight will recognise Simone Schulte, who's sort of stepped into retirement. Lucky Simone. But isn't it a great photo of a teachable moment? It just sort of really captures St Catherine's education. But we've been working on ensuring our teachers deliver an academic program that has a common language. So the girls start to get feedback that resonates as they move through each subject, and they really start to understand what type of student am I. And we really want the girls to have an intellectual endeavour and to really embrace that as well. So I'm sure all of the teachers that you'll meet tonight you will enjoy talking to, and they're very keen to work with you. And we're just sort of working through parent-teacher interviews which occur later this term, an opportunity to really speak to every teacher as well. So as I said, Liv and Alison for term 1, Sky assures me she's got all her baby sort of care sorted for term 2, but really looking forward to coming back. Of course, our heads of faculty. So when you transition from a primary school to a secondary school, you're often used to working with perhaps just the classroom teacher, but our heads of faculty are pivotal in really caring for these staff members and ensuring the professional learning occurs, and ensuring that the program delivered with a level of expertise. Our head of maths is here tonight, Angela Clancy. So maths often draws a lot of questions, doesn't it? And so she's very happy to sort of talk to you about your daughter's math. Our Head of Humanities, Paul Gilby, is actually speaking to our Year 9 parents tonight and sharing our new Year 9 program, which is embraces a Harkness or a Socratic style of learning. So he's sort of sharing that with the Year 9 parents. Our Head of Science, Vanessa Jackson-McRae, I think is down in the Year 9, but will be available to have a chat with around the fountain. Vicky Marinelli is our Head of the Arts. Our Head of Languages, Anna Pianetze, unfortunately not with us tonight. Anna's mum passed away this week, so she's spending some time with her family, but she's herself a French teacher and loves conversations when around that Year 8 to Year 9, when girls are sort of trying to make that decision whether they will continue French or Japanese or Chinese as an elective. And she really likes the girls to be a little bit resilient with some of those, challenging decisions at the end of this year. So I'm sure you will hear from Anna. Elka Gainser is our Head of Learning Plus, and Sam Basford, who was also on camp, and I've seen some crazy photos of Sam in fluoro from camp in the disco the other night, that Wham T-shirt, but Sam's our Acting Head of Health and Phys Ed this year. And of course, really for our Year 7 parents, these staff members are also attending tonight. So if you've got questions about sport, Nick Racine or Sam will be able to answer that. James Brown is our Head of Performing Arts, such an appropriate name for James, but the girls will soon learn who James is. And James is very excited about the Black Box Theatre, which is about to be opened. Tim Collins is currently our Head of Music. Tim has actually submitted a resignation at the end of last year and just completing his required 7 weeks before Nick from Xavier is coming across. So we do have a new Head of Music starting in a few weeks' time. And Marianne, of course, wears 2 hats. She's also a Head of Debating and Public Speaking. Seri Lloyd is here tonight. Seri has been our Head of English for 15 years, and English has been one of our top performing subjects year after year after year. And so a really exciting professional step for Seri. She steps onto the senior leadership team as the Director of Teaching and Learning. And Kanako is stepping into the role of Dean of Academics, and she'll be talking at the Year 10 and 11 night. As I suggested earlier, we're really thinking or wanting to our parents to understand this thinking agenda that we are on. And 3 years ago, Peter Ellerton from the University of Queensland, who we partner with, asked our staff 3 questions. How do you know students are thinking in your classroom? How do you plan for student thinking? And how do you give feedback on student thinking? And those 3 questions 3 years later are still relevant for us. How do we know girls are thinking in the classroom and not just, sitting there and rote learning information? What are they doing with the information and the content that they've got? Parents will be very familiar with from their primary years of that purple column around remembering and recall, and really VCE exams and VCE syllabus and that have moved well beyond just recall. It's about understanding content. It's about applying it to new situations. It's about analysing data and interpreting it. It's about evaluating scenarios and, of course, creating in that art space. So our thinking agenda is ensuring that we are not just staying in one column, that we're taking the girls right across. And so Marianne's going to share what we do in English. And I think for our Year 8 parents, you'll probably be surprised at what they did in Year 7 in English last year. And for our Year 7 parents who've come from a Year 6 primary school literacy English program, you'll be amazed at what they're doing in 6 months' time as well. So over to you, Marianne. I think I might have just jumped you one slide there.
Good evening, everyone. I was just reflecting, just as Michelle was talking then, I actually wear 3 hats. The 2 formal roles that Michelle referred to, and also as a Year 12 and a Year 7 English teacher. And that passion goes all the way through. What we do at Year 7 articulates into what it is that we're encouraging in our students at Year 12. I'm conscious that Ari, who's speaking after me, is actually going to be in my Year 12 class tomorrow morning. And Simone Schulte, who you saw up there, her daughter Holly was in my Year 12 class last year as well. So there's a little bit of symbiosis here tonight. Term 3 last year, this is what the plan was for my Year 7s. All of the Year 7 teachers have these resources, but teachers may approach them in slightly different ways. So our key text for Term 3 English is Hitler's Daughter. This year it's been replaced by a text called The Boy at the Top of the Mountain by a very famous adult and child author, John Boyne, but the essence of the tasks will be very, very similar. This particular text throws up some challenges, cultural, social, historical, for the students. There's a wealth of information that students need to be familiar with before we, in fact, begin studying the text. Thank you. Knowledge about First World War, Second World War, the period between the war, the Weimar Republic, why Hitler was able to rise to power. Was he democratically elected? What led to dictatorial rules governing the lives of minorities under his leadership? Where did anti-Semitism come from? Was it ingrained in a German culture? A wealth of information. And so how do you then get young Year 7 minds who might not have any background about this particular socio-historical context to respond in a thinking way, but also in an empathetic and compassionate way? So this is our key text. I won't read everything on the PowerPoints. You're able to do that yourselves. But the end point of this particular Term 3 unit is that the students actually develop teal paragraphs. They will become very familiar with teal. You don't need to read that. It's just to show you through colour coding that the students have a high level of understanding of the structure of a teal paragraph. And I have to say, even my Year 12s need to understand teal, albeit in a more sophisticated form. So let me just take you on a journey of what I did in Term 3 last year. The best laid plans can actually go astray. So the unit was planned. My thinking my Teaching for Thinking project was ready to start being documented. The students were ready, and then we went into lockdown. So the challenge was then to transition all of that learning online and to keep the students engaged. There is a 3-week period before we actually begin the text, and I use that as an opportunity to start exploring visual language. What was the kind of messaging in between the wars and also in World War II by the Nazi propaganda machine to its own citizens, both German and those of Jewish heritage? We need to expose students to these sorts of messages and this type of content in a very culturally sensitive way. Our students come from a wide range of backgrounds, and those students who are impacted, who may have parents or grandparents who've been impacted by this particular socio-historical period, are often the ones who enrich our classrooms and really lead the discussion. The final goal is always empathy and compassion. And so with that in mind, how do you then encourage young students to start to decode the messaging that's coming through here? And then I apologise in advance for the next selection of posters because they're quite despicable. How do you then get them to decode these ones? And then because people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, how do you get them to decode these ones? And the way that I chose to approach it was through questioning. If we ask students very generally what sorts of questions we need to be able to understand this type of visual language, after grouping the students into 4 broad groups, and you heard Michelle there talk about our head of Learning Plus, this was a streamed task. So I grouped the girls according to their academic ability. There were many other opportunities in semester 1 for groups, either in debating or other types of group work, paired work, for students to work in mixed ability groups, but this task was not like that. I worked with the girls in the Learning Plus group, and that was group 4. Group 1 were my students who can largely work unassisted, but you can see there that this is what happens when students don't have guided questions. The sorts of questions that they will ask will be very, very broad, very disparate, very, very general. So my challenge was then to help them target their thinking very, very strategically so they could start to see the pattern of visual language. So these were the 4 questions that I modelled to them. What kinds of colours, what kinds of characters, what kinds of words or images, language, and what kinds of symbols are used when we look at any type of visual, but in particular, these curated posters. And then overall, to be able to understand what the message is from those posters. The result of that, once you guide students questioning, is that this is what they come up with afterwards. And even though there is a difference between what Group 1 was able to produce compared to Group 4, you can see that the gap has been closed in terms of the students' thinking, the level of depth and complexity that they come up with in response to responding to those particular images. But that then needs to be documented. We can't just leave it at the questions. We then need to document what our response is. What's the effective colour? What's the effective particular characters? And then this became part of the students' documentation, and every group did this. And you can see there in the highlighted words that it's real active language. The students then now start to make a connection between the strategic intent of these posters, the manipulation of the viewer as being intentional rather than random, rather than haphazard. So every student is given the opportunity to really extend their understanding, but the key cognitive skill is thinking. I would add that these notes were not developed by me, they are the students' own work. By the end of the process, I acted only as scribe. So initially we lead, then we record. So the immediate impact in my class was that the broader thinking could be demonstrated. The students understood that, in fact, the intent of the poster was to have the impact of manipulating the viewer. It was designed to segregate. It was designed to malign. Yeah, and so they had an increased awareness of the power of the Nazi propaganda machine. And a deeper understanding of all types of visual messaging. It doesn't stop at year 7 though, like I'm watching Ari here in front of me, and in about a term's time, we're going to turn our hand to the very same thing as well. So that the button is stuck, Liz. Let's go back. So from year 7, we might start with propaganda posters, but that journey doesn't finish. So at year 12, there's a recognition by VCA that graphic language and graphic novels, graphic cartoons, can also contain very powerful message. And in the last 10 years, there have been at least 2 graphic novels listed for study, examinable at the end of the year, at year 12. We're not doing one, but we could have easily have chosen something like that in the past. There's a graphic novel that's come onto the course at year 8. So our year 8 students may in fact do this same type of questioning in analysing their advertising unit and their graphic novels. At year 9, book listed is the film, The Help, and there's all sorts of posters that you could expose students to about discrimination, especially in the deep south of America. But then from year 10 to year 12, understanding of visual language is an examinable component at VCE. So we start that journey at year 7. There's a myriad number of ways of doing it, and what I hope to show you tonight is how I did it in my class. Thank you.
It's a great example, isn't it? I hope it really allows you to understand what's happening in the classroom of the day. And it's sort of not lost on me, Marianne and Seri, that, pretty much year after year, about half of our cohort 40 plus scores. So they're landing in the top 9% of the state. But you can see how that journey starts, at year 7. But just the level of growth in the material that they're being exposed to, the thinking that's required is really quite amazing. So thanks for sharing that, Marianne. I'm sure you'll be happy to sort of take any answers in that as well. Ari, are you ready? Okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Arabella Llewellyn, and tonight I'd like to share a little of my journey at St Catherine's. 2017 was the year that I became a member of the St Catherine's community, when I moved from my primary school to St Catherine's in Year 7. Coming to a school that has a primary school is daunting, with the awareness that there will most likely be at least half of the students knowing each other and most likely have best friends and friendship groups already established. My main worry when moving to a new school was my ability to make new friends or as good of friends that I had left at my previous school. Fast forward a few weeks into the first term of Year 7, I was already involved in multiple co-curricular activities after being encouraged by my teachers and my Year 11 mentor to take part in as many activities outside of the academic scheme of things as possible. I soon found my love of competing in GSV sports, which was where I made many of the friends that I'm still friends with today. The majority of the sports that St Catherine's has to offer are team-based, which pushes everyone to bond with each other and foster the beginning of great friendships, especially in Year 7, when participation levels are high and enthusiasm is even higher. For Years 7 through to 9, I was participating in a new sport each term, starting with tennis in Term 1, netball in Term 2, soccer, and then a swift transition to badminton in Term 3 due to badly bruised shins, and then basketball in Term 4. It wasn't necessarily playing the sport in a team or a pair. It was the bus rides, which sometimes spanned from an hour to an hour and a half, coming home in peak hour traffic. But we never minded because we had buses full of girls prepared to unintentionally deafen our teachers and bus driver due to our bus karaoke. It was very rare to have a quiet bus, even if all the teams came home with a loss. However, I had never experienced such teamwork until I began rowing for the first time at the end of Year 9. This time I was encouraged to do this sport by my parents because all my siblings have tried it, and my dad had also rowed during his days at school. During the Learn to Row program, I was so surprised to see how many people actually participated in the sport. It was more common to be rowing than not, and the majority loved it enough to carry into the next year. I continued rowing until Year 10, but stopped at the end of the year so that I could focus more on my studies. This was a personal choice, and some girls can handle the balance better than most. I had never experienced teamwork and camaraderie as profoundly as I had when I was a part of that rowing culture, and would highly recommend the girls to just give it a try when they enter Year 9. So by the time I had finished my first year at St Catherine's, I discovered that the secret to meeting new people, not just in my year level, but in ones above and below me too, was participation. Around this time, I had joined Environment Club, a place where my peers and I meet together to discuss methods to make our school and school community more sustainable. Jane Goodall came to speak at a special assembly that we had held. For those who are unsure who this amazing woman is, Dame Jane Goodall is a primatologist and anthropologist who is known for her long,
and this is reflected in the program.
To get feedback that resonates as
in my school and personal life, as Jane had allowed me to discover that there was scope for me to pursue my passion in doing what I can to contribute to protecting our environment. St Catherine's as a school managed to not only support the Year 12s at that time to contact Jane and persist until they were able to gain her valuable time, but also managed to inspire myself and many others, I'm sure, to take action in improving our sustainability and pursue an occupation in environmental studies. And now, a few years later, I'm environment captain and am endeavouring to tackle the environment problems in our society as my career, just like Jane. St Catherine's has not only allowed me to delve into opportunities I may never have experienced elsewhere, but has also helped me to develop into the person I am today. The way in which the learning is set up to give us independence, with the independent learning tutorials following our newly found adjustment to working independently post-COVID. These ILTs prep me with the skills to be able to apply for an acceleration program, whereby I complete a university subject early as my 5th VCE subject this year. But the school has also helped me in my resilience. During COVID, we all faced hardships, but the school supported and encouraged all of their students to persevere and make it to the end of another week in lockdowns, as they knew that we were all struggling one way or another and made it their top priority to ensure our well-being. I wish all of you and your daughters good luck for the rest of your time at St Catherine's. They are in very good hands, and I hope I get to see some of them at the Environment Club this year. Thank you.
You did a good plug for Environment Club at Assembly the other day, so that was well done. All of your daughters do drama, and all of your daughters do music, and many of them are in Sharon Singers with Liv, and we are really excited to be opening the Black Box Theatre. Just sort of looking over at Joe Grasso, who's part of the Building and Property Committee. Maybe at the end of this term, I'm hoping Joe will give me a nod, but it will be a most amazing space. It will seat 180 people, but it can be in a number of different configurations. Your daughters will love performing in that space. They'll love learning in that space. Following that, the School Council's next project is this space here, and to really harness the love of sport at St Catherine's and to create, a very large fitness studio across the top to reorganise the seating and create a sports precinct in here. So that will be the next task. And then the final task of the Dorothy Pizzi renewal of this building is the Winter Garden outside. So some exciting building projects that, we are quite clever in being able to refurbish without disrupting the learning program too much as well. So really excited about that. You are now very welcome to speak to any of the staff. Please stay and have a glass of wine or a beer. It's a really beautiful evening. You can have your mask off, and we hope that term 1 goes really well. It was remiss of me just not to introduce Gina Peel tonight. So Gina is a member of the senior leadership team as well. She's deputy principal and really works across the whole school in operations. And Gina's reads these very long documents from the Department of Education around COVID safe schools and works very hard on that. We feel quite fortunate that so far this year we've just really had a sprinkling of COVID cases. So fingers crossed that's how it stays. I think at the start of the year we were anticipating just a wave, and I was quite concerned about how we're going to keep the workforce going, but so far so good. So I think the warmer climate and girls are eating outside and doing everything we ask. They're great with their masks, and I hope the rapid antigen tests are going well at home on Mondays and Thursdays as well. And we get our second supply, I think, next week. So the girls will get their second stock of that as well. So just to finish with, we have this great theme in this Towards 2025 strategy around wanting our graduates to be bold, in that we want them to be courageous in trying new things. We want them to be independent with their learning. We want them to be resilient, and we already know that they've shown us that, and to be creative. And so